Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says the importance of the booster dose to plan ahead. The article here is speaking about the COVID-19 booster shot. Before we understand what this article is all about, let's have a brief idea with respect to the background. It is generally considered that Edward Jenner is the father of vaccinology. Why? That is because back in the year 1796, he inoculated a 13-year-old boy. This vaccine was able to prove the efficiency and it demonstrated the immunity to smallpox, which is why he is called as the father of vaccinology. Does it mean this was the first vaccine? No. There were other vaccines as well produced in Asia, but according to the Western health thinkers, they believe that Edward Jenner is the father of vaccinology. Then again in the year 1974, we have the World Health Organization. It comes up with a program. This program is called as Expanded Program on Immunization. What was this program all about? According to it, guidelines were issued by the World Health Organizations. So countries started preparing their own vaccinations. One was to assist and help the children. The other was to help the women. So this was a program introduced by the World Health Organization to provide guidelines to prepare the vaccination so that children can be immunized with respect to the vaccination. Finally, in the present era, what we have is the COVID-19. So many countries, organizations came up together and they have come up with the COVID-19 vaccination. But most of these vaccinations as of now have two doses. Some of them also have one dose as well. But in spite of these two doses, these are not enough. But what we require is an additional booster shot, an extra shot. That is what is called as booster shot. So what is this booster shot? As of now, we have about two doses that has to be given to an individual. An extra dosage that has to be given to an individual repeatedly, time after time, is called as the booster shot. So this article goes on to say that going forward, when it comes to the COVID-19, because it is here, it will continue to stay until and unless an end is brought to the COVID-19 infection. What we have to give is more COVID-19 booster shots, says this article. Let us try and understand what is the author trying to express. Whenever there is a vaccine that is manufactured, whenever there is a vaccine that is produced by the manufacturers, the most important concept that comes into play is the inoculum dose. What is this inoculum dose? This is the amount of antigen or the live attenuated pathogen that is present in that vaccine. So what happens? Whenever there is a vaccination that has to be created, what do? We pick up the original virus. This virus structure is changed and the weakened virus is produced. This weakened virus is acting as a vaccination and introduced into the body of another individual. So that is what is called as live attenuated pathogen. So the original virus is taken, its structure is changed, the virus is made little milder, it does not infect that person, and it is introduced into the body of the working individual. And as a result, higher level of this inoculum dose means that there will be more variations of the vaccine and ultimately it may prevent the infection, but it may also have side effects as well. So determining the optimum amount of what should be the viruses, that is the chain structure, is called as the inoculum dose. So what is this inoculum dose? This is nothing but the amount of antigen or the live attenuated pathogen that is used in the manufacture of the vaccines. When it comes to the vaccine manufacturing, there are two types of vaccines. One is called as the replicating vector vaccine. The other is called as the non-replicator vector vaccine. What is this replicating vaccine? Basically, this will produce new viral particles in the cells that they interact. Let's say, for example, if we are speaking about vaccines like measles, rubella, mumps or chickenpox vaccines, all of these are replicating vector vaccines, which means they would produce new viral particles when they are introduced into the body. Then there are other set of vector vaccines like the non-replicating vector vaccines. What are these non-replicating vector vaccines, they are the ones which are unable to make new viral particles. On one side, when it comes to the replicating vector, they are able to produce new viral particles, but in non-replicating, they are not able to produce the viral particles. They only produce the vaccine antigen. There, they were able to produce the viral particles, but in here, they would not be able to create the viral particles. Instead, they only produce the vaccine antigen. Some of the examples of non-replicating vector vaccines include diphtheria, whooping cough, tetanus, hepatitis B, Haemophilus influenzae B, pneumococcal, human papilloma virus, inactivated poliovirus, inactivated hepatitis A vaccines. In all these cases of non-replicating vector vaccines, what we also require is booster dosages that have to be given. Why should the booster dosages be given? When it comes to the replicating vaccines, what we have is these viral structures that will be created over a period of time. But that is not happening in the non-replicating vector vaccines, and as a result, every now and then booster dosages will have to be given. Let's take the example of influenza vaccine. There are boosters that are recommended, that is annually. Then we have tetanus, where once in 5 to 10 years these vaccines will have to be given, that is a booster shot will have to be given. In the present situation, most of the COVID-19 viruses that we currently have is called as non-replicating vector vaccines, which means since they do not actively produce after a considerable period of time, their efficiency may wane down after a considerable period of time. There are variants that are persisting, which is why the rationale for the booster dosages that have to be given for the COVID-19 includes, because there are a large number of variants and their efficiency would be dropping over a period of time, and as a result what we require is the booster dosage. So a booster dosage is nothing but an additional dosage that is given to another person after the administration of recommended dosage. What is the recommended dosage? As of now, Covishield has 2 dosages, Covaxin has 2 dosages. So after these 2 dosages, if the person is given a third dosage, that is what is called as booster shot. To take another example, let's say there are few people who are affected by other ailments. They have comorbidities. Let's say they are already given these vaccines, but these vaccines may not be working for them because they already have other ailments in them. These are the people who are suffering with disease. To such people who already have the weaker antibodies because of the immunological deficiency, in such people, booster dosage is a must, says this article. Further, the article goes on to say, when COVID-19 hit the world, we had the first wave initially. It was predicted that the first wave would end. We did not look at the second wave, but second wave did come as well. And what we have is more variants in the cycle. And as a result, there are new variants that would come up. So what we require is a structural change in the vaccine so that we are able to counter the menace of COVID-19. So as long as the COVID-19 virus is staying, we have to provide these booster shots, says this article. So in order to overcome this particular issue, what we require is a vaccination strategy. As of now, people are being administered the vaccines. They are given the first dose after a considerable period of time. They are given the second dose as well. But what if people are required to give the booster shot? In such a case, what we require is a vaccination strategy in which we have to ensure there is a clear-cut policy guidelines issued by the government of India. Therefore, the article goes on to conclude that a strategic planning in terms of offering these booster dosages is a must and compulsory going forward, says this article. So we have to ensure that we have a clear-cut structure, a plan and a strategy to overcome the menace of COVID-19 by giving the booster shots to the people if it is necessary on the basis of evidence, says this article. In fact, the author goes on to say that Pfizer in United States of America, in fact, Israel's Ministry of Health have also started giving the booster dosages to above 60 years of age and those suffering from other ailments. Such should also be considered by India, and after getting all the evidences, factual data, we should also go ahead and provide the booster shots, is what is this article all about. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says an urban job safety net. When COVID 19 hit us all, there were two things that happened. One, people started losing their lives. This fell under the health scenario. The other was in reference to the economic activity. The economic activity also came under a standstill. People also lost their jobs. They were not able to sustain their lives, and their livelihood also came under threat. So, what do we have is two issues. One, people lost their jobs, and at the same time there were people who were losing their lives because they were infected by COVID 19. So the government came under a issue. One, they had to focus on the health related issue. On the other side, they had to focus on the economy, and they also had to balance as well. If we are concentrating only on the health, the economy will go for a toss, and people livelihood will go for a toss. Employment opportunities will be lost, and people would not have anything to eat, and they may also die because of hunger as well. So the government had to balance one, the health sector, and at the same time the livelihood sector as well. This is where we have one of the important statistics given by the World Economic Outlook report. As part of the assignment, you have to put on the comment section who releases this World Economic Outlook report. So this economic output report goes on to say that the global GDP shrunk by 3.3%. The contraction in the US, Brazil, Japan, Canada and Euro area was in the range of 3.5% to 7%. When it comes to India, it dropped to a considerable level of 8%. Now, if we consider the unemployment rate in the Euro area, US and Canada, it shot up by 7.1%, 8.1% and 9.6%. Even in India, it had initially spiked up. It had raised to a certain level that we were not able to control the unemployment rate, and as a result, the author goes on to say, we require plans so that we have to provide livelihood means and mechanisms to the people in the country. So the article here goes on to say that whenever there is an economic crisis, whenever there is an employment crisis, the government of that particular country basically looks into the sectors. Which are the sectors which are impacted? This will be identified by the government, and the government will come up with policy schemes and programs. So what are these sectors? It can be the agricultural sector, it can be the manufacturing sector, it can be the service sector, or within the agricultural sector they may have multiple other sectors as well. So identifying these sectors, coming up with policy guidelines, coming up with new programs is what is the agenda of the government in all the countries. But in the present situation, with special emphasis to India, the article goes on to say that instead of focusing on the sectors, it has to be in the form of urban and rural divide, says the author. Why is that we have to focus on this? That is because when it comes to the urban areas, there might have been people who would have lost their jobs, and at the same time there might be people who would have lost on the rural side as well, but most number of people lost their jobs in the urban areas. So during the first wave of COVID-19, in fact during the second wave of COVID-19 as well, when people lost their jobs in the urban sector, they immediately went back to their homes in the rural sector. Ideally and generally, when you consider, people are pushed and they leave their rural areas and come back to the urban areas. But during the COVID-19, they left the urban areas, went back to the rural areas. Why? Because the job opportunities in the local and in the rural areas were more, and thanks to the landmark scheme of Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. So people started moving, vacating the places from the urban areas. They moved to the rural areas because there was one of the job guarantee scheme in the form of Mahatma Gandhi National Employment Guarantee Scheme. This was only present in the rural area and not present in the urban areas, which is why people started going back to their homes, to their rural areas, because they were provided job under this scheme. Do we have anything equivalent at the urban areas? Yes, we do have, but not to the impact efficiency that which is present at the rural area. When you consider the urban area, what we have is the National Urban Livelihood Mission. This would provide self-employment opportunities, skill upgradation ideas, credit linkages through the banks, but people were not in a position to take a loan, create self-employment opportunities during the COVID-19. So on one side, when you consider the rural areas, they were able to create jobs with the help of this landmark scheme, but on the other side, the self-employment program, self-upgradation was not able to generate enough jobs in the urban areas, which is where the author considers one of the schemes that was introduced in the Himachal Pradesh. Himachal Pradesh comes up with one of the scheme similar to that of the Manrega at the urban area, which is called as Mukhyamantri Shahri Ajivika Guarantee Yojana. So what was present at the rural level in the form of MGRNEGS, a similar program was adapted at the urban area. According to this program, 120 days of guaranteed wage employment would be provided to those people who are part of the urban local bodies. Any adult member of a household who is less than 65 years of age can apply for this job. This job will be an unskilled work. If such a person is making an application, he would be provided a job card within 7 days. After he's been provided this job card, he would be provided an employment opportunities within a fortnight. If they are not able to provide such a job opportunity, such a person would be compensated at a rate of 75 per day. This means that what was originally present in rural area, this system was imported, adapted in the urban areas, thus preventing the migration from the urban to the rural. But there were challenges as well. The first basic challenge that this program felt was in terms of the finances. Did they have the fiscal capacity to come up and introduce this program? Yes, they did have. How? We have what is called as the urban local bodies. Every urban local bodies is also provided a finance. So the finances that was given to the urban local bodies were made use of to run this particular scheme. Next, what we have to focus is on the efficiency of this program. Was it a successful program? Yes, says the author. About 3% of the total urban households in Himachal Pradesh were provided job opportunities in this sector. As a result, the intention was met with success, says the author. So going forward, it is not only the rural areas where such schemes and programs have to be implemented, but this also has to be enforced in the urban areas. So sector wise is important, but at the same time, we have to focus on the rural urban divide, says the author. Therefore, the author goes on to say that such a model which was successful in Himachal Pradesh should be adapted in multiple states in India. When such a model is adapted, we would have an urban livelihood scheme which will be implemented successfully. The divide that is existing in the rural and urban will be further reduced, and as a result, this can act as an economic vaccine, says the author. As of now, we have vaccines for the health sector. As of now, we have doctors to take care of, but we also have to take care of the livelihood, which is where the economic vaccine in the form of such programs is the need of the hour, says this article. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, fill consumer disputes panel vacancies in 8 weeks, says the Supreme Court of India. Before we understand what this article is all about, first let us understand some of the basics. What do you understand by consumer protection? There is a person, a consumer, he goes and buys one of the goods or he gets services from one of the companies. But such a company which is providing the good or the service might have engaged in a fraud or might have committed an unfair practice, which means that this particular consumer who's bought a good or taken the service is under loss. As a result, he requires one of the forums to voice his concern. If he goes to the court of law, the court of law is already having a lot of cases. To prevent this, we require another forum, and that to provide what we have is the Consumer Protection Act. Let's say there is a consumer, he finds that one of the goods that is given is defective in nature or it is deficient in service or in a good. In such a case, he would be able to file a case in the consumer forum. So basically, who can file a complaint? Any person who feels that a particular good is defective in nature or a service availed is deficient in nature or a trader or a service provider might have charged for a product which is far in excess of the stipulated price given by the government. In such a situation, what you will actually see is that this consumer can file a case in the consumer forum. So what do we understand from this? If the consumer has a problem with respect to a product or with respect to a service, he can file a case in the consumer forum. We have three structures when it comes to the consumer forum. We have the District Consumer Disputes Readdressal Commission at the district level, State Consumer Disputes Readdressal Commission at the state level, National Consumer Dispute Readdressal Commission at the national level. How does this work? This has two jurisdictions. One is the regional jurisdiction, the other is the pecuniary jurisdiction. This is in terms of the finances. So if there is a consumer who's bought a good or availed a service for a consideration, and if it does not exceed 1 crore, in such a case he may have to go to the district consumer forum. If it exceeds 1 crore and it is less than 10 crores, he may have to go to the state consumer forum, and if it exceeds 10 crore, in such a case he may have to file a case in the National Consumer Disputes Readdressal Commission. So this particular commission also has a structure. What is the structure? When it comes to the district commission, what they will have is a president. They will also have more than 2 people as well. These people will be from the judicial offices. Similarly, at the state level, we will have the president who will be appointed in the state commission, and at the same time there will be not less than 4 people or not more than such number of members as prescribed in consultation with the central government. Similarly, at the national level, we will also have the president and not more than 4 people and such members as may be prescribed by the law. So what is this article speaking about? So when it comes to the district, we have the members. When it comes to the state, we also have the members who take care of this and pass the judgment. And finally, when it comes to the National Readdressal Commission, again we have the members. So the article here goes on to say that these members who also give the judgment, pass the orders, are not appointed by the central government at the national level. They are not appointed by the states at the state and the district level. And as a result, consumers who go to these forums are not provided justice, says the Supreme Court of India. Ideally, whenever there is a vacancy created for all these forums and readdressal commissions, relevant authorities will have to be appointed, judicial members will have to be appointed. But in this situation, the Supreme Court says that you, the central government, you, the state governments, have not appointed these judicial members and other members, and as a result, justice is evading for those consumers, says the Supreme Court of India. Apart from this, the infrastructure that is required, the administrative facilities that have to be given, the staff that is required, members that have to be accommodated, is not functioning in all these consumer disputes commission, says the Supreme Court of India. Therefore, it has asked the central government and the state governments to advertise the existing and the potential vacancies within the next 2 weeks and ensure that all these vacancies are fulfilled within a maximum period of 8 weeks. Further, the article makes a mention of legislative impact assessment. What is it? We have the central government which can come up with laws. We can also have respective state governments which can come up with law. So there is an original intention and objective as to why this law was created. Has this law met that objective? To check this, what the governments will usually have to conduct is the legislative impact assessment. So the Supreme Court in this particular case has requested the government of India and the respective states to conduct an activity, conduct a study where they have to understand whether the Consumer Protection Act come up by the central government, has it had any impact on the consumers, what is the efficiency levels, how many cases have been declared positive, is all that this government impact assessment will have to conduct, and this will have to be given to the Supreme Court of India. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says building consent. The article here is speaking about postgraduate medical admission. How does this work as of now? When you look into the postgraduate admission when it comes to the medicines, let's say there are about 100 seats. In this 100 seats, they have to give their NEET. In the NEET examination, a merit list will be announced. This 50% of the merit list will be given to the All India quota. So who would be able to make laws? The laws will be made at the central level. But when it comes to the other 50%, this is regulated by the state government. But now there is a new regulation that has come into picture called as the Postgraduate Medical Education Regulations 2021. According to these regulations, it says that there will be common counseling for the admission in all medical institutions to all postgraduate broad specialty courses on the basis of the merit list of the national exit test. So until now, the state governments had their own rules and regulations for the counseling. The central all India quota had separate rules and regulations, but going forward, according to the new educational rules, there will be common counseling, which means the states would not be able to conduct the regulations counseling at the state level. Why? Because there will be a common counseling, says this regulations. As a result, we have the Indian Medical Association, which has gone ahead and opposed this decision. Why? Because if there is a joint counseling, common counseling, this means that the state governments would not have any discretion. They would not be able to provide enough number of services to the local population. Admissions at the state level might not happen according to the discretion of the state governments, and as a result, what we are violating is the federal principles, says this article. So going forward, since health is in the state list, it is the states who have to conduct their own operations, says this article. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. India should have a COVID booster dose vaccination policy guided by evidence. Discuss. Next question. It is time to formulate a wage employment based national urban livelihood scheme similar to MG and REGS. Explain the statement with relevant examples. So please write all your answers on the comment section. Peer review. Do give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.